it chapter by chapter, one bite at a time. So many adventures and mountains we can climb. Take it word for word, line by line, one bite at a time.
Welcome to Bite at a Time Books, where we read you your favorite classics one bite at a time. My name is Bree Carlile, and I love to read, and wanted to share my passion with listeners like you. If you want to know what's coming next and vote on upcoming books, sign up for our newsletter at biteatatimebooks.com. You'll also find our new t-shirts in the shop, including podcast shirts and quote shirts from your favorite classic novels. Be sure to follow my show on your favorite podcast platform so you get all the new episodes. You can find most of our links in the show notes, but also our website, biteatatimebooks.com, includes all of the links for our show, including to our Patreon to support the show, and YouTube, where we have special behind the narration of the episodes. We're part of the Bite at a Time Books Productions Network. If you'd also like to hear what inspired your favorite classic authors to write their novels, and what was going on in the world at the time, check out the Bite at a Time Books Behind the Story podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. Please note, while we try to keep the text as close to the original as possible, some words have been changed to honor the marginalized communities who've identified the words as harmful, and to stay in alignment with Bite at a Time Books' brand values. Today we'll be continuing Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. Book 3rd, The Grandfather and the Grandson. Chapter 1, An Ancient Salon. When Monsieur Gillenormand lived in the Rue Servandoni, he had frequented many very good and very aristocratic salons. Although a bourgeois, Monsieur Gillenormand was received in society, as he had had a double measure of wit in the first place. That which was born with him, and secondly, that which was attributed to him. He was even sought out and made much of. He never went anywhere, except on condition of being the chief person there. There are people who will have influence at any price, and who will have other people busy themselves over them. When they cannot be oracles, they turn wags. Monsieur Gillenormand was not of this nature. His domination in the royalist salons, which he frequented, cost his self-respect nothing. He was an oracle everywhere. It had happened to him to hold his own against Monsieur de Bonald, and even against Monsieur Beignet Pouvalet. About 1817, he invariably passed 2 afternoons a week in a house in his own neighborhood, in the Rue Férou, with Madame la Baronne d'Éty, a worthy and respectable person, whose husband had been ambassador of France to Berlin under Louis XVI, Baron d'Éty, who during his lifetime had gone very passionately into ecstasies and magnetic visions, had died bankrupt during the emigration, leaving, as his entire fortune, some very curious memoirs about Mesmer and his tub, in 10 manuscript volumes, bound in red morocco and gilded on the edges. Madame d'Éty had not published the memoirs out of pride, and maintained herself on a meager income, which had survived no one knew how. Madame d'Éty lived far from the court, a very mixed society, as she said, in a noble isolation, proud and poor. A few friends assembled twice a week about her widowed hearth, and these constituted a purely royalist salon. They sipped tea there, and uttered groans or cries of horror at the century, the charter, the Bonapartists, the prostitution of the blue ribbon, or the Jacobinism of Louis XVIII, according as the wind veered towards elegy or dithyrambs, and they spoke in low tones of the hopes which were presented by Monsieur after Charles X. The songs of the fishwomen, in which Napoleon was called Nicholas, were received there with transports of joy. Duchesses, the most delicate and charming women in the world, went into ecstasies over couplets like the following addressed to the Federates. Refrons dans vos culottes, les bottes de chemise que vous spend, qu'on ne dispasse que les patriotes. Und obre la drapria bank. There they amused themselves with puns, which were considered terrible, with innocent plays upon words which they supposed to be venomous with quatrains, with distiches even. Thus, upon the Dissolis ministry, a moderate cabinet of which Monseigneurs Decanes and Desserre were members. Pour refremier, les tronebrelles sur sa baisse. Il faut changer de sol, et de serre et casse. Or they drew up a list of the Chamber of Peers, an abominably Jacobin chamber, and from this list they combined alliances of names in such a manner as to form, for example, phrases like the following: Demis, Sabrin, Guev Saint-Cyr. All this was done merrily. In that society, they parodied the revolution. They used, I know not what desires, to give point to the same wrath in inverse sense. They sang their little ka-ira. Ka-ira, ka-ira, ka-ira. Les Bonapartists à la lanterne. Songs are like the guillotine. They chop away indifferently. Today, this said, tomorrow that. It is only a variation. In the Fuldes affair, which belongs to this epoch, 1816, they took part for Bastide and Jossin, because Fuldes was a Bonapartist. They designated the liberals as friends and brothers. This constituted the most deadly insult. Like certain church towers, Madame de Tissalon had two cocks. One of them was Monsieur de Lenormand. The other was Count de la Motte-Valois, of whom it was whispered about with a sort of respect. Do you know? That is Lamotte of the affair of the necklace. These singular amnesties do occur in parties. Let us add the following. In the bourgeoisie, honored situations decay. Through too easy relations, one must beware whom one admits, in the same way that there is a loss of caloric in the vicinity of those who are cold. There's a diminution of consideration in the approach of despised persons. The ancient society of the upper classes held themselves above this law, as above every other. Marigny, the brother of the Pompadour, had his entry with Monsieur le Prince de Soubise. In spite of? No. Because. Du Barry, the godfather of the Vaubernier, was very welcome at the house of Monsieur le Marchal de Richelieu. This society is Olympus. Mercury and the Prince de Guémené are at home there. A thief is admitted there, provided he be a god. The Count de la Motte, who in 1815 was an old man 75 years of age, had nothing remarkable about him except his silent and sententious air, his cold and angular face, his perfectly polished manners, his coat buttoned up to his cravat, and his long legs always crossed in long, flabby trousers of the hue of burnt sienna. His face was the same color as his trousers. This Monsieur de la Motte was held in consideration in the salon on account of his celebrity, and strange to say, though true, because of his name of Valois. As for Monsieur de Lenormand, his consideration was of absolutely first-rate quality. He had, in spite of his levity and without its interfering in any way with his dignity, a certain manner about him which was imposing, dignified, honest, and lofty, in a bourgeois fashion, and his great age added to it. One is not a century with impunity. The years finally produce around a head a venerable dishevelment. In addition to this, he said things which had the genuine sparkle of the old rock. Thus, when the King of Prussia, after having restored Louis XVIII, came to pay the latter a visit under the name of Count de Rupen, he was received by the descendant of Louis XIV, somewhat as though he had been the Marquis de Brandenburg. And with the most delicate impertinence, Monsieur de Lenormand approved. "All kings who are not the King of France," said he, "are provincial kings." One day the following question was put, and the following answer returned in his presence. To what was the editor of the Courier, Francais, condemned? To be suspended. Sus is superfluous, observed Monsieur de Lenormand. Remarks of this nature found a situation. At the Te Deum on the anniversary of the return of the Bourbons, he said on seeing Monsieur de Talleyrand pass by, "There goes His Excellency, the evil one." Monsieur de Lenormand was always accompanied by his daughter, that tall mademoiselle who was over 40 and looked 50, and by a handsome little boy of 7 years, white, rosy, fresh, with happy and trusting eyes, who never appeared in that salon without hearing voices murmur around him. "How handsome he is! What a pity. Poor child. This child was the one of whom we dropped a word a while ago. He was called Poor Child because he had for a father a brigand of the lore. This brigand of the lore was Monsieur Gillenormand's son-in-law, who had already been mentioned and whom Monsieur Gillenormand called the disgrace of his family. Thank you for joining Bite at a Time Books today, while we read a bite of one of your favorite classics. Again, my name is Bree Carlile, and I hope you come back tomorrow for the next bite of Les Miserables. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter at biteatatimebooks.com and check out the shop. You can check out the show notes or our website, biteatatimebooks.com, for the rest of the links for our show. We'd love to hear from you on social media as well.